happening, everybody? We are back with another video continuing our wonderful Angular series. In this one, we're gonna go a bit deep with our Angular components and explain some very important concepts with Angular components. Just a little recap of what we were able to achieve so far. We were able to create a new Angular app and as well as be able to add a few routes that we would like to go through within our app. And we were also able to create or generate a new component that is called home component. We're also going to take a look at how we can style our components, also check how the input and output works, and as well as some important lifestyle hooks within an Angular component. To be able to generate a new component, you just have to say ng-generate-c, and then you say category. This component will be having different categories, things like the first category will be like t-shirts, maybe the other one will be cups or mugs, and then the third one could be content, and then these are just like the different top categories we would like to sell from this cater store that we are building. Now this is added, we can just go ahead and replace line 11 category / category with the category component. Also make sure that we can import the category component this side like that, and then we can navigate straight to the category component route, and you can see category works. I would like to teach you 4 main concepts that are quite important in Angular, which is string interpolation, property binding, event binding, and as well as two-way binding. Well, we have had a very simple and most basic components in our Angular app, but that is not always the case. So how can we incorporate component data into our template? And that is where string interpolation comes in. So what we would do is, let's say for example, we have a variable called category name, and its value is going to be, let's say, shirt category or any text. Then for us to be able to show this directly onto our HTML, we can just go and replace the text inside our p tags with something like that. The syntax is quite simple. You just have to provide 2 curly brackets at either ends of your variable name within your HTML template. And then the second concept is going to follow something similar. Let's say we have a variable called search, and it has a value shirt and then with the letter S. For us to be able to show such value within an input, let's say this is a very simple HTML input, then we would do something like this. This is called property binding. So what is happening here is you're binding values from a component to properties of an HTML element or an Angular component. This is used to set elements properties dynamically. And the syntax, it's quite simple. You just need to have a square brackets at either sides of your HTML attribute. In this case, it's a value, and then you have an equal sign. Then you have these 2 quotes, and then you put in the variable name in between. And the third one is called event binding. You probably have seen format like this, when you have a button and then you have an in-click event that you assign to some sort of a method within your logic. So I just have to do something like that, and then let's just say we do an alert to just show whenever that button has been clicked. So in this case, if we go ahead and click this button, there will be an alert that is showed that says method called. If I click here, you can see there is a method called alert that pops up. And this is called event binding, which is literally, it calls the methods in response to some events that were emitted from your HTML file. As you might have guessed, two-way binding will be a combination of both your event binding and as well as property binding. It will somewhat look something like this. And what this means, it means that it can be able to get real-time updates from this ng model, and as well as be able to set the value real-time as well. But for now, don't worry about it. We'll take a look at this when we look at some Angular forms and how inputs are handled in a normal Angular form. Let me just disturb your focus by something very, very nice. So I came up with a mock of how the homepage of the Cater store would look like. So what you are seeing here is the where you're gonna select the landing page of the store, literally. Black background, iPhone island at the top there. That's where I got the motivation. And then obviously it will have these blocks that are like your categories within the, the homepage. So what does this mean? It means that I'm no longer going to create a new category page, but rather just put in the categories as part of the homepage. So yeah, one page less now. The homepage, the category page is basically the very same thing. And when you click at least maybe on the shirts or the books, the mug and the content, it will, take you to a list of products relating to such a category. But since I said we are coding this together, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if we need to change maybe some sort of color coordination, move things around and all those kind of things, please do that. And then we'll see how we can take it from there. Back to reality now. The other question that could come up would be, how do we then facilitate the relationship between a parent component and a child component? In this case, our parent component will be a home page and the child component will be the category page. Use the design that I just showed right now as a reference to understand how that kind of looks like. Before we go any further, I think it's now certain that we need to remove the category route, or maybe just rename it to something like product list, and then we can just have something like obviously the category like that, and then for now we can name it, we can just make it reference that whole thing. The only two difference that will be there between the product and the product list will be that the product will show a specific product and its details, and the product list will show a list of product, and if there is any maybe applied filters, then it will show it accordingly. So I'm just going to keep it like this for now. And then for us to pull in the category, we then go to the home component TS and then import category component like that. And then we come here, say app.category, and just use it like that. As any other component, and you can see, kaboom. Same time, it becomes the child of a home page. Now that we are successful with adding the category as a child of the home page, let's see how we can get or set this value from the home page via the input decorator. All you have to do is just come to the very existing variable and type in @input and then enter, and then just double brackets like that. It will be imported from Angular core. Let me show you here at Angular core. What this does, it kind of opens a pathway for the parent component to pass down data to the child component. So let's say, for example, now we don't want to say shirt category, maybe we want to say mugs only, and then we can just go here and then use something like that, and then you just say mugs 1 second, mugs only. Then I save. When I save, same time, goes and overrides the initial value that is here and then puts the value that I just imported here. This can also be a variable. So if, let's say, for example, we have the category name variable on the parent, I'm going to name it category name parent value, and it says maybe home, let's say mugs only. I'm just making the names a bit more weird so that you can see the changes that goes in there. And then I come here, instead of doing the double quotes, I just put in the variable there and I save. Then you can see that it says home mugs only, which shows that it's reading this value and then put it in its template. And then from the template, it passes it into the input of category name. And then the input of category name goes and overrides the initial value that is there and then shows it into the category template. And that is just it. That's how inputs works. There is so many other advantages that goes in here. There are other methods that you can use to listen to the latest value of input and all those kind of things. I won't really get into the depth of it, but rather you can go and just read a bit more about it. If you have a specific question, please leave it in the comment sections. That is all fun and great, right? But then now let's say we want to pass a value from the child back to the parent. Then obviously we can just think of the opposite of what an input is, and it's just at output. I forgot the spelling now. And then let's say this is going to be on, I think, say button click. Then I mean you can see it's also just finishing the statement for me, but I'll explain everything, don't worry. So what this does, it kind of follows a different pattern from this one, right? It still uses the output decorator that you give it a kind of a value variable name, and then you have to have this is equals to new event emitter, and then pass in the type that you want to pass up back to the parent, and then have this kind of brackets. The event emitter also comes from at Angular Core. What this does, it kind of creates a stream from the child to the parent that allows the parent to be reactive whenever the child has given out the latest maybe value or event. But you're gonna see something interesting from this whole event emitter, right? But let's just say, for example, now we don't want to show this alert like this, but rather we want to put that alert into the home component. How would we go about it? We can just come to say I'm gonna delete this and then say this dot on button click, and you have to say emit. Emit is the value that will go and invoke that event that I was talking about, that will tell the parent, hey, your child kind of has made an event, and then listen to it somehow. And then let's just say we want to do that, and maybe just add some more text like from the child component. Cool. So far, if I click here, nothing will really happen, right? Nothing will really happen, but you just need to do a simple thing on a home component HTML file. You have to come and do things like this, and then give it a method that will listen to it. I mean, you can see here, the structure kind of looks similar to how you do an on click on a button, which kind of gives you an idea that, okay, it's literally like the same thing, because on click on a button, it's an event emitted by a button. But in this case, we are doing our own custom event emitter from the category component. So let's just say this this class can be named anything. I'm going to call it parent just so that you can see the difference here. And then I'm going to do a quick fix, and I'm going to say declare the method. So by that, it will just go same time and create some method for me. I think this has to be done like that. Yeah, it will just go and create a method for me. And instead of just throwing that, I'll let it do an alert that shows whatever the value that has been emitted there. So now you will see that when I click, it then shows, okay, shed S from the child component, which shows that an event was successfully emitted from the child component back to the parent component. How did that happen? You go ahead and then create a variable that has an on event emitter, which is named on button click. And then whenever some sort of an event, or could be a method, it could be initialization, whatever method you want to use to emit this event, you go and then put in the on button click event emitter and called the method emit, and then you pass in whatever value you want here. This can be a string, this could be an object based on the type you've provided here. Then you can just kind of, pass in the data there. Then when you go to the home component HTML or any template file you are using the category component, then you give it this, what are these? These, I think, round brackets around the on button click. This name has to match exactly the name of your output variable. And then you pass in the method that will be receiving this event from the home component TS file. And then you just have it like this. And this type is to kind of match what you have specified here as well. And then you can do whatever you want to do after that. And the last concept we're going to discuss around components, it's component lifecycle. So a component lifecycle is the sequence of steps that happens between the component creation and its destruction. Each step represents a different part of the Angular process for rendering components and checking them for updates over time. So in your components, you can implement lifestyle hooks to run code during these steps. So some of the most common methods, or these are the only ones that I know so far in Angular, are, your constructor. You probably have seen something like that. And then there's ngOnInit, and then destruction, and all those kind of things. These things run at different times. Things like constructor, it runs whenever an Angular it creates a component. So whenever your component is loaded into the DOM, then constructor gets ran. And things like the ngDestruction is whenever you remove your component from the DOM. So when it's getting destroyed. And then things like the rendering, obviously it says the name when it's rendering to the UI, and other things that can just detect the update throughout the life cycle of your component. But let's just pick top 3 or 4 that I normally use and just, see how they work. So to just check how the constructor is called anytime the component has been created, I'll just go ahead and then add a constructor. You can just use CTOR and then enter, and then it will just add an empty constructor. I will do maybe an alert. I think it's the easiest way. And then I'll say CTOR home. And then that's it. If I refresh this, you will see that there will be an alert that says CTOR home, and that is it. I'm not sure what's happening here, but I don't think I have to worry much about it. So yeah, then it shows that, okay, the constructor is always called every time the component is being created. Same applies to the category one. If I say category, and then I refresh, it will obviously first call the home one, and I say okay, and then you can see that it's calling the category one. Cool. So then another one that is quite useful, it's the ngOnInit. This one runs once after Angular has initialized all the components inputs. So something like this, you have to say implement on init. I think you have to also just import it from Angular core, and then this is the on init on home, and I think for now we can just close the alert, and that's it. So let's close the other one for category, do that, and then I can just refresh. Then you can see that on init kind of runs, and it runs once. And there's another one that is similar to this, which is ngAfterViewInit. This is much more useful if you want to do certain things to the elements that you're seeing here, because on init it probably doesn't have the elements rendered on your UI as yet. But then after ViewInit, it says that I'll kick off after everything on the DOM or template elements have rendered. Things like you can have a reference of H1 during this call. And then obviously you won't be able to have that on an ngInit because it just runs before that view or the UI renders. So yeah, that's kind of, those small nitty-gritties. And the last one, obviously, it's the ngOnDestroy, which is the one that is going to run once this whole thing has been removed from the UI. I think if we try to refresh, somehow it was just complaining about alert is not defined. So I just changed my alert to be using a console log, and then you can see at the bottom here, they were logs that were consoled here at the bottom of this ngAfterViewInit and ngOnInit. You don't really have to call them anywhere. Angular will know when to call these ng hooks whenever necessary. So yeah, but you can go do a little bit more read up on when to use what and how. Thank you very much for watching this one. Otherwise, the next video we will try to implement these screens that you are getting to see right now. And I will just explain at a high level of what I did and how I went about it.